We're all having a fantastic day today. We've got a very special episode coming at you guys. As each and every one of you guys know, we have Stage 4 playoffs for North America, one of the final regions to take place going on tomorrow. So today we're going to be breaking down all of our predictions, expectations, and looking at some of the stats for each of these teams as well. As always, joined by Hippo. Actually, I just looked. We're joined by the entire Luminosity team.
Good God.
Ooh, Bob, you're looking quite sexy today.
This guy.
Thanks. I guess. All right. Well, hi band. How's it going?
Bobby, I have one quick question.
Yeah.
Who do you have winning stage 4?
Devious. I have a quick question. Why won't you come on the spawn?
I have so much anxiety. I'm sorry. I gave it for a reason.
Do what?
I don't touch grass for a reason.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
gamer.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
I was gonna, but I don't know. I was too scared.
Okay. Well, sorry. You'll have to watch the entire podcast to get my prediction on who I think is going to win stage 4. So. All right. How we feeling today, guys?
Not good. I'll text you.
Pretty good so far. I think everybody is like so antsy. I mean, you could just hear the kids in the background. Like, those guys are ready to game. Those guys are having a good time, and that's what it's all about. So I'm glad to be here. I'm ready. We're finally getting the show on the road. Everybody is already Seattle bound. Who's ready for some COD Mobile Stage 4 action?
Street is, but it's close one. Look at the delivery, bro.
I'm ready to go. Little B, how we feeling?
Pretty good. Apparently, I'm Hippo now. And
Listen, I'm getting it changed. I was trying to do 5 million things at one time. Okay.
And on the freaking YouTube chat before, or somebody was like saying, "Oh, when they looked at me in the interview for ESL, they were like, oh, little B got a bit fat." So,
Bruh.
Listen, to be fair, Little B did put on weight, so maybe that's what they were talking about.
Yeah,
you know,
I gained 20 pounds.
It's the girlfriend 20. It's how it goes.
Wow. It'll be ready to go.
We are ready to go. All right.
Bulk season, man.
Obviously, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Before we hop into the NA stuff, just wanted to go over a couple things that have happened in other regions. So first thing to talk about, I think pretty much all the Garena groups are set for Masters 5, which I think is going to be next weekend. But we did have Smart Omega bouncing back against EZR and getting the win there, so maybe not looking quite as shaky. It's top 4 in each group, so nothing like too terribly drastic for really either of them, but definitely a big win for them to kind of solidify their place, especially given how shaky things looked after that loss to BBC.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think, overall with Garena, we still have to respect Omega as like one of the top teams. Same with EZR. Like they have some of the strongest talent pools, some of the most experienced players as well, that are coming in. So even Yobabs, technically speaking, and Yato, who are the youngest probably amongst all those kids, they are still, despite how young they are, they still have experience playing in underage while they were underage in some of these tournaments as well. So, I mean, by no means are any of these kids lacking in any way. Same with the other teams, other top teams in both of the groups, honestly, like with AMT as well. Over in the other group, there's no surprise by any means in terms of how the groups ended up. So just excited to see how things shape up for stage 4.
For sure.
Now is it the top 4 teams from each have a playoff? Like each
top 4 from each move to the playoffs, yeah.
Yeah, well, I looked at it. And they look like they're pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
I caught the most recent broadcast, and I gotta say, I love the fact that Coach Jericho's back in the mix, as well as Warden. They made a pretty fine combo as far as the broadcast goes. So, I'm gonna tune in a little bit more to get a little bit better of evaluation on that Omega team. But I gotta agree with Hippo. I mean, the name speaks for itself. So hopefully they'll pull themselves out of the trenches.
Yeah, I would say we also had Scotty versus Zigzag finally happen today. And that one, as I expected, was a pretty close one. Zigzag won, although Scotty kind of rolled them in the hard point. So I'm interested to see. Now, obviously, the big question right now is anybody going to be able to take down Low Kings? And as of right now, I don't think that there's anybody that really has made a realistic case. I think Zigzag's the only team that you could maybe make the argument for just because they haven't lost a match. But Yeah, WPM, I think right now look like probably the most individually dominant team that we've seen in Garena, especially as far as the Garena Masters tournaments that we've had so far. Because for the most part, it's always been kind of a toss-up for who we expect to be the top dog, and I would say they've pretty much run away with things so far. So I'm curious to see how things shape up. The one other thing we wanted to mention is the fact that Wolves have 100% secured a spot in Stage 5 for the Chinese region, but outside that, it is going to be an absolute bloodbath for the rest of the teams, as it is very much a free-for-all between, I believe, SPG, Q9, and KZ. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that one's definitely going to be interesting. Hippo, I don't know if you've been watching the action over there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I keep tabs on them, especially as it's getting closer to, you know, the part of the season where all the teams are going to get decided. And so, I mean, I think with KZ, with all due honesty, it was a mix of feelings in terms of how things could be interpreted with regards to how they beat Wolves. Because if you look at it, they lost all their respawns, but they did manage to pick up, you know, all the S&Ds, which is, you know, in a region that is so S&D centric as China is. It speaks volumes in both good and bad ways, right? For Wolves in particular, I think we want to look more so whenever we look at those results, in particular because kind of everybody's, you know, looking at Wolves more than anyone, right? Not to underestimate or put down any devalue any of the other Chinese teams per se, but everybody's kind of looking at Wolves as like, you know, the team that's going to, you know, perform well regardless of what teams kind of qualify. And so kind of just seeing how that stands, I think it's going to make a lot of people have eyes on that particular series as a whole. But regardless of that, as a whole, when we're talking about the bloodbath that exists between the remaining three teams, I still have hope for Q9 to a degree. Like I think that they're the team that's still out of the remaining three teams. You know, probably in the respawn avenue is going to be a bit more solid than SPG and also KZ. That is to say, like if I had to pick between the three, the remaining two teams, probably it's really weird because if I want to just purely talk about like in terms of the bout, like what teams deserve to go there, if we in talking about, you know, which are the most well balanced teams in terms of all three game modes and are able to actually, you know, potentially put up a fight at Worlds, it would be SPG and Q9, right? Unfortunately, with DYG losing Nono and Ma, you know, for the rest of the year, it's really tough on them to make any case. Not to mention they didn't even make it, so they're out of the running. But you know, if we're purely looking on a points perspective, it's really awkward because each team has a different threshold per se that they have to reach in terms of results for them to be able to secure a spot, right? Like it's slightly different. Like Q9, unless I'm wrong, which Volts or if anybody else is watching this, y'all can correct me. Q9 is right now along, like KZ is in the worst spot. Like they really have to perform really well because of the fact that they just have not been doing well as a whole beforehand in any of the other China Masters. And Q9 has been doing slightly better, so they're in a slightly easier boat, while SPG is probably in the best shape out of the three in terms of the points from my understanding. So I could be completely wrong about that though. I'm not remembering the points very well. So
yeah, I believe KZ is in last right now. As points go, I think they have like 9.
So
it's 9 total, right? I think they have 9 total points.
It's 9, yeah.
Which is insane given like how long, the fact that we're through 2 seasons already, and I think they were tied last place for last season. So the fact that they bounced back as hard as they did, and also managed to take down Wolves was impressive in and of itself. Q9, yeah, Q9 ended up winning stage 2 of season 6, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch for sure. The fact that that and Garena Masters happening at the same time is kind of crazy. That being said, Garena Masters not necessarily as much on the line. I think a couple spots in stage 4 for Garena, but obviously no spots in stage 5. So that one's more going to be just about the competition in general. But just wanted to touch on those couple of things briefly before we do move on to the topic that is the main topic of the night. Obviously, stage 4 NA happening tomorrow. So we kind of want to take this one matchup at a time. We'll go LG versus Devious for the first matchup. So Verdict, what do you feel like has got to be the path to victory for both of those teams going in?
Look, we'll just start with the obvious. LG, you need to go in and handle business. This is a 1v, first place versus fourth place scenario. Theoretically, there's no shot that Devious takes you down. So you've got to go in with the mindset that you are going to take this team as seriously as you would, a tribe or even a mayhem in that regard. If not even harder in that regard. You got to look better in the hard points because that's been your struggle. We've heard it from Tech. We've heard it from Hippo. We've heard it from numerous of other LG, teammates. But at the end of the day, they're still the best team in North America, statistically speaking. So going into this matchup, you got to be crisp on the hard points. You can't allow the small things to get big, and just continue to do what you're doing in Search and Destroy. We're gonna flip it. That's pretty basic. If you're Devious, this journey is going to be a little different. I don't know if you chalk the Search and Destroys and just find a different way. I don't have too much of a test pool of data to see what their S&Ds look like against some of the top teams, but they didn't look good in the matchup that I looked at. The hard points, however, they kind of remind me of Exclusive in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
You remember all throughout group play, we would watch Exclusive and they would get like big gains against teams like 117. They go up by 60, or they be hanging toe to toe with Kings, or they be whipping Animus in Hacienda. Like, they show us very, very high tier gameplay in the moment when they need it the most, but they got to be consistent throughout that. I think you got to focus on your hard points being your number one. You got to get a better map pool selection for Search or Destroy if you want to take down LG. For one, you got to ban Tunisia, bro. There's no way you're gonna play them on Tunisia again.
I think that's the recipe for like everybody when it comes to Search and Destroy. Like, there's no reason that anybody should not be banning Tunisia, especially up against LG.
So they got to focus on their strong points, which are your respawns. They got to get better in the controls. Obviously, it's a lot easier said than done. And I mean, anything can happen. It's LAN. It's a team that is. I mean, this has got to be like one of the most chilling matchups going into a matchup. If you're LG, that's all I'll have to say.
I don't feel like it's as big of a. I don't feel like it's as big of a guaranteed win as you're making it out to be, because I think especially you look at the head-to-head between those two, and the fact that Devious basically effectively gave away map 1 by allowing LG to get Tunisia in the map pool. It was very close to go into a map 5. Like, they take the raid, and then realistically they should have won the Hacienda hardpoint. Like, that was super winnable. And they outslayed them pretty heavily as well. So that was really LG clutching up in the last second to be able to get that. But I don't know. I don't feel like it's a guaranteed win. And I've talked to some of the players. I kind of like the approach that Devious have taken. Like, even though they haven't had the devices ahead of time, like, it just seems like their mindset going into this, there's not a lot of pressure on them either. So I don't know. I'm not saying I think Devious is going to win, but I think it's a possibility.
LG right now to perform. I think it's on LG to perform. I think Devious has, I mean, obviously not the easy end of the stick, but look at, you just said it, their hard points have been great, and the focus that LG had taken coming into this was they're struggling in getting on the objective. They're struggling in playing the field correctly in hard points. So you might mess around and find out.
What are you saying, Lobby?
Yeah, as I said, mentality is a big thing. As we saw the interviews of all the players coming in, Scott be saying like they got nothing to lose. They're just there to have fun, give it their all, and But LG, coming in as like the first seed, they got a lot of things to prove. First of all, their hard point, as you talked about, hard point wasn't the best especially compared to like the second seed tribe. But yeah, as you guys said, it's not going to be one of those like easy write-off matchups, or it's going to be like a boring matchup. It's actually going to be one of those dark horse matchups, and possibly an upset. It could happen.
Thoughts on that, Hippo?
No, it's funny. I Tectonic right like in front of me, right across from me, and whenever like it's gonna be one of those upset matchups, like you know, like, But no, I mean, listen, I'm just gonna say this, right? I think Little B is like quite on the money in terms of the thought process that we're having right now, which is it is not as if we don't have a chip on our shoulder in the sense of we know the performance we put up against Tribe in the hard points is not our best by any means. We know what we're capable of. We know that we can do more. We know that we can do better. And what happened versus Tribe, especially the takeoff, which I swear to God, if I hear one other person out, I've already had hundreds of people talk to me about this. If I have just another person talk to me about it. No, listen, I even did a voiceover for Pat's video, and some dude in there decided to pull a joke against me and comment, Hippo, could you teach me how to play hardpoint takeoff? I was like, brother.
Oh man.
But the point is this. We have a chip on our shoulder. We know as much as yes, like we're the first seed. We're not thinking we're the first. I don't think our mentality is that we're the best or anything like that. None of the players here think that way. The only mentality that we actually have right now is we got to win this thing. We're and it's gonna be one game at a time. We're not gonna just be like, oh, Devious is an easy blow past and just and down the line. It's one game at a time. Like Devious first, we get through it, great. On to the next one.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, Tech should know a lot about not thinking over teammates or other like small teams. When me and Tech teamed the 2019 or 2021 Team Mayhem, looked over a lot of like teams like Devious
ARP?
and ARP. There you go. Probably have to bring it up, but yeah, they be coming out of nowhere and then they be taking some games off.
Hold on. I didn't underestimate anybody. You got
Yeah. Okay, there you go. But like team wise, it's a team.
But
Yeah.
and so I would say for us with the matchup against Devious, I mean I've said this before. I think in the Spawn as well. At least for me and the way that I think about it and the way that I talk with the boys about it is we have to respect Devious. We have to respect because they're not a bad team by any means. Somehow or another, those guys just managed to make it work. And I also think that when I talked to Scott the other day, it's not as if they don't have a chip on their shoulder either. Because I think the big narrative that kind of and like the kind of the storyline that exists for them is, and I think Scott mentioned this before in the Spawn when he was here, is that they should lose, but for another is that it's that DICE should have been here instead.
Mm-hmm.
People are thinking like he said it, and like that's what Scott brought up, like like the technical issues, like and stuff like that. Like yes, like they believe that they could have beaten DICE, but a lot of people think DICE should have if it weren't for that DICE should be the one that's here. And so I think that there is that on that kind of weight on them. They're just thinking like and that kind of fire under them. And so there's no means whatsoever that if you have a team, if you have an underdog in particular that has a fire within them, you can't underestimate them by any means.
Like for me, like what I like from my experiences, I think I mean at the end of the day a win's a win, job's done, right? But I feel like the things that we're gonna see is the longer the game goes on, so like if LG doesn't shut them down on on like clearly like easily just take the hard point S&D and the control, the longer the game goes on, I feel like there's gonna be more the stronger Devious becomes. So if I was LG, I would get him out of there as soon as possible. I mean, at the end of the day, a win's a win, doesn't matter. But I feel like for LG, that's the game plan.
Well, of course, and we also have to think about it in the sense of like, I mean, for one, we want to start off strong. We want to start off on the right foot mentally, as well for the player in terms of just making sure that they feel, really, really ecstatic, hype, and feel really happy about their performance. But the other aspect of it too is like we don't want to extend the series because we don't want to show other teams how we play certain maps, to because and so at the end of the day, we're confident. I'm not going to deny it. We're confident, but none of us here are overconfident. Yeah, we're not arrogant. Yeah. We're not overconfident. We're not underestimating by any. So
I would
We were
say
on-
I would say with the matchup between the two teams, it definitely turns I think it turns the control into like an ultimate swing mode.
Swing
Like we
mode.
always talk about it
Yeah.
being a swing mode, but it really is. Especially because not that we necessarily are going to assume that LG didn't improve at all in their control over the past however long. Why did that come up over on the screen? But you definitely can't like assume that they've perfected everything over that amount of time either. And so because of that, I feel like it definitely comes down to it, given the fact that we've already seen Devious can beat them on it. I'm assuming we're basically going to get an auto ban on Crossroads for Devious and probably an auto ban on Raid for LG. So a lot of it's going to come down to what I would assume to be a standoff hardpoint or a standoff control, which I think will be interesting because I don't think we have those updated control mechanics in the esports version, which can make it very heavily dependent on who gets map pick for the defensive side.
Well,
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Hippo.
I just want to quickly correct that by saying I think people did bring up how I think somewhere like it was I think even you posted about it, Bobby, maybe about how like the tick system got added now.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, and that's just gonna hint towards what we're working with here in terms of control, in terms of the version of control. But that said, I will say this. I think when it comes to long story short, of course this is true for Devious as well, right? Because they're everybody's grinding, but a month is longer than people should expect in terms of growth. There can be more that happens in a month than anybody could expect. That's all I'll say. Like we're here not to get overconfident or anything. Again,
what he's saying is they're gonna play Raid. They're not gonna ban it.
I'm just saying, Tech came
That's
on
all
the
I'm
spawn
hearing.
and said that they weren't
Yeah.
going to play Raid. So that's what I was going based off, but that could very well not be the case.
Oh no.
Up and over their head.
all I'm gonna, I mean, listen, I'm not gonna reveal what our picks and bans are. I literally right before the spawn, we had a freaking 10-minute session just going over everything. So
Devious players in the chat right now. Huh? Like,
everybody was here. We had a whole family meeting.
That's a mental warfare right here. Mental warfare.
So, but I think I will say this. I think you are right in that control has always been kind of that swing mode because of the fact that if the series isn't over by that point, that immediately can just shift the momentum from right there.
Yeah. Jobs on time. Yeah.
And so I do think that you're very very correct there, especially because if it does lead into a game 5, then depending on whoever picked that map, mentally as well, it just completely swings the momentum towards their favor.
Yeah.
And so I don't want us to get to a game 5. Honestly, I want us to close it out by game 3, but we'll see. I mean, Devious again, they're a great team. They're able to put up a real fight, and I'm sure that they're gonna do their absolute best.
All right. Well, Little B, I'll hand things off to you next, talking about the first day of matches. We've got Tribe going up against the new Mayhem squad. So what do you feel like are paths to victory for each of those teams, or you can take one in particular if you feel more confident in your prediction there.
So let's start out with Tribe. So with Tribe, obviously I would consider them right now the best hardpoint team right now. Also, I'm not gonna lie, Mayhem is also looking really, really strong on their hardpoints as well. But for Tribe, all they gotta do is they gotta just work on their S&D. I feel like it's a bit inconsistent compared to LG and stuff like that. So I feel like for Team Mayhem, they're looking into getting that map 5, hitting to as map 5 and getting that map 5 S&D win, or else get a map 3 win. But for Tribe, honestly, just play keep their game on hardpoint, and then just hopefully they worked on their S&D and improved on it. But yeah, Mayhem, as I said, work on the S&D. Hopefully it's a game 5 and towards there. But what I think of those two, I think my prediction is I think it's going to be a 4
We doing predictions yet?
Prediction? You want predictions yet, Bobby? You want
Little
predictions
B,
yet?
why do you always get so ahead of yourself with the freaking predictions,
Yeah,
man?
I'm
Come
just
on.
open. Hey, man. All right, but yeah, that's. I think that's. I think that's one my things to win. But
So within 4 games, right? That's like
yeah. I think within 4 games. Yeah.
Verdict thoughts?
I gotta agree with Little B. I think both teams are very strong in Hardpoint, but when Rabala was added to that tribe roster, that's when things kind of like busted wide open. If you take a look back, and I don't remember the map count from Simplicity back then, now Mayhem, now stage 3, we look at that one where Tribe gets beaten by, a very hungry team. A lot has changed since then. I think the identity of that Mayhem roster went a little it went astray. I hope they got everything that they needed to correct after dropping a Shotzi and picking up a player like Blur. That's a strong pickup. It's also, you see the counterbalances of that and the repercussions of that action. Have they been able to mold themselves into the team that is better than that stage 3 final, tier Simplicity roster? That question will be answered as soon as they step into a hardpoint game. I don't know what the maps are going to be. I don't think it matters at that point. This team struggled with map. Talking about Mayhem, they struggled with map variety to begin with, and I didn't see it get much better. What I will say is they put up a better fight against LG, but LG, again, we've already talked about. This is one of their weaker game modes for reasons that they have already talked about. But if you're going into this one as a Mayhem fan, you've got to just brace yourself for either a tough start or a dominant one off the rip. I don't think there's going to be anything in between. For Tribe, they look like final form, man. I don't think that they could do anything to get much better than where they were and where they left off. Obviously, they left the last game of the group play with a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth. So I hope they come in hungry because I want to see them dominate as well. But I have to say, like, if they continue to play their game the way that they're playing it, dominant in the hard points, very flexible in the search and destroys, and the controls looking equally as dominant, I don't know if Mayhem are going to stand a chance.
Yeah, I think I think another thing to add to that is you got Jez back on land. I know Space said he didn't think that was going to change a ton. I'm fairly confident that the Jez that we've seen, not that we've even seen like a bad Jez. He wasn't putting up bad stats, but he was putting up like fairly average stats compared to the rest of the squad. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to have a huge stage 4 as well. So not obviously a knock against Mayhem in saying this, but despite the fact that we saw an LG win over Tribe, I think there are definitely more questions around LG's game than there were against about Tribe's game. And I think the fact that we also saw Tribe just for some reason decide to chal LG on Tunisia. Like if you throw a different map in there, it could be a very different result. So I don't know if that was like them feeling overly confident about what they had practiced or something else, but I don't feel like you should ever just like needlessly shell a team on their best map, one that's like universally known as their best map as well. Curious to see what they can do with a different map pool thrown in there and maybe a little more preparation as well. Tribe doesn't have a coach, right?
I think it's Hot.
Is it Hot?
Was the coach, right?
Yeah, cool.
Todd's their manager.
Yeah, I thought he was a manager.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, I mean, traditionally, I guess Tribe teams just really haven't had coaches, so it's worked out for them for the most part in the past. I am curious if having somebody to maybe look a little more deeply into the map picks and bans, because I feel like that's probably the one place where they did miss in that matchup. I think that it's definitely possible for Mayhem to take a map. If I see it happening anywhere, I would say it probably would be that first search and destroy, but Just tough to imagine a scenario where they find a way to take a respawn, unless we do see like massive improvement. That's one thing that nobody's talking about is everybody's going to be playing on different devices from what they were for the last 2, 3, 4, from what they've ever played on. So that could completely change the game if there are people that are like super dependent on the device that they play on, and that's something that can just completely change the outcome for anybody. So obviously it's not locked in, but we got Forsaken with a 1.475 hardpoint KD up against other playoff teams in stage 4 group. So him putting up just constant numbers like that, ridiculous numbers in control as well. This team's respawns is just absolutely berserk. All right. Any other input on that matchup? It feels like we're all kind of in agreement on the path forward. Hippo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be fully honest with you. I think, by no means a shade to Mayhem whatsoever. Because, I think I have a lot of respect for those boys, and I always enjoy hanging out with them, especially, since Jesus and Blur, my old boys, they're there. But straight up, just from seeing how things have been, I think Tribe takes it 3-0. I'm gonna make the bold prediction here and say that Tribe takes it 3-0. And it's kind of like
God Almighty.
For me, my concern is, I mean, yes, the search is one thing for sure for Tribe, but I don't think by any means per se they're necessarily a bad search team. I think that just because of the fact that, sure, they made, I wouldn't necessarily even say their pick on Tunisia was necessarily a bad call per se, because I know that, at least from my context of understanding, is
The first 3 rounds they owned you guys. I mean, it kind of like stalled out afterwards, but
I mean, yeah, because the thing is, Tunisia was one of their better maps as well. Like it was probably one of their top 3 maps from my understanding. So like I'm not surprised that they decided to pick Tunisia. Now, as of course, if we because of and to be fair, you could also kind of look at it in this way, which I'm not saying I know how Tribe is thinking, but I do think that at the end of the day, both teams are going to qualify anyway, regardless of what the results of the group stage were. And so for them, I think in a way, playing that Tunisia is just to be able to see that metric of like where they stand up against us, because Tunisia was our best map, and it's known to be our best, right? And so, but that aside, I think by no means is Tribe a bad S&D team. I think people underrate Tribe as an S&D team. Like, I think that they actually have a lot going for them overall, and I think people just kind of look at that particular match and think like, oh my god, Tribe sucks at S&D. No, it's not like that. It really isn't. So I think when it comes to control and hardpoint, obviously their hardpoint is really solid. They're a dominant hardpoint team, especially on maps like Takeoff, which they specialize in. So I'm not surprised if they manage to if they manage to do well against Mayhem. Obviously Mayhem will put up a fight. They've been improving a lot. We've been scrimming them, and we noticed that they've been improving a lot, and they've been doing really, really well without question. And so yeah, it's very possible that they even do upset Tribe. Like, granted, sure, the narrative is the fact that we're a worse hardpoint team than Tribe, and so maybe we're not the best metric per se. But I mean, I think that regardless, I think Mayhem definitely can stand a chance in hardpoint, depending on how the map selection goes. Which that is kind of like one of the things that I really am curious about, how the two teams are going to approach the map selection, right?
yes.
Like that's going to be a huge deciding factor as to how the series can swing, as for whether it's going to be 3 games, 4 games, or even a BO, or even going into game 5 potentially. Because the interesting thing between the two teams is that they have a set of maps they really are strong in, and then they have across all game modes, and then there's also some maps where they're just not that great on, which is true for really every team, right? But it's a question of how large that pool of like maps are just like really just they head to head against each other. They just have a really high win rate, or like a near guaranteed win rate, compared to maps where they're just like 50-50, or like they just pretty much lose.
Yeah, I felt like their diversity even before they went into stage 3 for map pool selection was for hardpoint was very limited. If I recall back, this core group of guys literally only played standoff, and of course this is how long it's been since mentioning this fact. And I feel like they've evolved to an extent, but they've also taken a hit in the meantime. And again, trying to counterbalance those adjustments and those changes have been a little more overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
I've always felt like they were a strong hardpoint team. Don't get me wrong in that regard, but
course.
their map pool has been very limited in that. Say, I was hoping that things would change closer to. Of course, we haven't seen the teams for quite a while, but it seems to be like they're falling in that pattern. I hope they've evolved. I've hoped they've been able to figure out what needs to go where and why and what needs to happen for them to win, because ultimately they have a great team. They have been one of the most electric teams to watch.
Sure.
And them and Devious. Devious has got a chance to do the same thing. This playoff, but I really hope that they have settled down. They've got all the situations that come up above for roster changes and set you back, and I really hope they get back to playing that core hardpoint game mode that we know them for.
All I'm gonna say is this. As we talked about Tribes S&D, and obviously the control being a swing mode to a degree, right? And both teams have controls that they are really good on, and so again, I think it comes down largely to a matter of map picks and bans to a degree. Overall, I would say control probably swings in Tribe's favor in the greater scheme of things, across looking at all the maps.
That's fair.
I'm probably leaning towards that, but again, I'm just gonna reiterate this one theme that's gonna be the big thing for me, big kind of thing for me for y'all to look out for, which is a month, which is more or less how long it's been, kind of, right? Is a long time for teams to grow, either in a positive way or a negative way, right? And so I think, of course, teams are grinding, and I think Tribe. I think they're a force to be reckoned with. They're coming in hot, and Mayhem as well. They have a talented group of young kids. And even just seeing how they've been in scrims, throughout the LAN experience thus far. Granted, yeah, we haven't played right on a tournament stage, right? It's not like that, but just seeing how they're handling themselves thus far. They seem ecstatic, they don't seem, it's less nervousness, it's just they just seem really, really ecstatic. And I'm sure Jesus
all about execution now.
I'm sure Jesus and Blur are helping them, settling down with that as well, because they've been there. They've been there, done that, so really excited for both teams for that particular showdown. I think if there is a matchup that is going to be the most likely in terms of some kind of upset happening, it's actually that one. In my opinion.
That's bold.
It all depends on the map pool.
Wait, you think Mayhem over Tribe?
No. I'm saying
that you're saying that's the most likely to upset it, right?
Yeah, out of
so
all the matches,
you're saying that after you said 3-0?
Yeah, I'm saying that. Yeah, no. Nah. Man,
no. He basically said it all depends on the map band. It all depends on the map band because.
Hey, man's trying to.
I'm just saying, you're the one that said 3-0, and now you're saying that's the most likely upset scenario. So I'm curious to the thought process.
I'm just saying, my bet is that it's going to be a 3-0 with a win for Tribe. However, out of all the potential matches that we have, right? If we look at all the possible worlds that exist in terms of the different matchups that could happen. The one that has the greatest likelihood for some kind of crazy upset to happen is that one, in my opinion.
All right.
In other words, if an upset.
So what you're saying is there's no chance we get an upset tomorrow, and that we're just going to be watching the stream, eating popcorn, and not being.
I'll even make that bold claim. Yeah, no upsets tomorrow whatsoever.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hippo, since you've not saying you think there's an upset, but since you think the most likely team to upset is Mayhem, who is the X factor for that team?
Oh, really interesting question. Okay, Thinking real quick. So I think it kind of depends on who they decide to bring in their main lineup, right? Because they have 6 excellent players, really, that kind of, and like I'm sure that they've been, trying to figure out and finalize the roster in terms of who they really want to bring in. Because the pacing completely changes. The tempo of their gameplay completely changes depending on, for example, whether Pepe is put in or not, right? Or whether they have Blur, etc. down the line. Like I can't, I don't know. I'm not I'm not Zandy's their manager. I'm not any of them, so I don't know what they're deciding. I know that they have a core, right? Core set of players that they've been sticking with, but I don't know exactly what they're deciding on as their main 5 per se. Like
I would go in assuming that Cartels is binged.
So if
okay.
if someone like if I think it really just depends on who is going to play. That could change things, because for example, if they put Pepe in, Pepe by himself is like, yes, he has a consistency problem, admittedly, in my opinion. Like there are days where he's really hot, but then there are the days where he's just like not that hot. But when he's really hot, my God, he drives the momentum for that team hard, And so, and like, especially for the pacing and respawns, like in particular for Hardpoint, he can turn it up real hard if he performs. If he gets shut down, then it's a whole different issue, right?
Wait. I totally crapped the bed there. Not Cartels. I meant Pepe.
Yeah, he's getting cooked in chat right now.
Whoa, calm down, people. Okay, I read the wrong name. Just give me a break, okay? These eyes are old and it's late.
Yeah, and so that's I think.
Wait, so who's the person you said you do think is going to get benched?
Pepe.
Pepe.
Okay.
Pepe is going to get benched, which I mean, I could see that.
That's really interesting, because when I saw
Christ, I literally just saw your Trovo chat just go up in flames. As soon as I said, bro, what? And I looked at the roster, I was like, why did I say that? Not Cartels. Jesus Christ.
I was about to say, I didn't know there was that much happening off stream, and you guys got all the intel, because I was like, wow, Pepe didn't play like the entire last 3 days of action, and all of a sudden he's back in.
Yeah, Sylvia is going to be in my DMs, bro. Good God. What are you talking about, Verdict? What's going on here? I'm just going to retract my statement. Back to you, Hippo.
Just to answer the question of who the X factor is going to be, so I'm going to go under the assumption that Blur is definitely playing in the main 5, right? I think Blur is going to be the X factor. Now, but it's the X factor in a different interpretation of that, right? I'm not talking X factor as in like, oh, this player is going to be like the best in that lineup, right? And it's going to be kind of, carrying the momentum for that team. It's more so as in, it depends on how this player plays as for how this team might perform overall. And the reason why I say that is because Blur, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the players, is actually a rather slow-paced player. And the thing is, if we look at Simplicity historically, Mayhem, I'm so sorry, Sylvia, but Mayhem, listen, when I try to schedule scrims and put them in there, my phone automatically autocorrects to Simplicity. Because I've been
Wait. About that, slow-paced players, I know Blur plays really passive. Doesn't Jesus also play really passive as well? I know he's a sub now, or he's switched over. But I swear, Jesus, isn't he the anchor? Is he an anchor of the team, or is it Blur now?
No,
I think he's the anchor. Is there SMG?
Oh, okay, but like more for like fighting spawns. Okay, yeah. More for like
he uses Switchblade.
I would say Blur right now. Blur has been more the anchor.
Okay, because I mean, as we see, Jesus has the second highest KD in stage 4, so I thought he was also going to be really passive.
Right now, the way it looks,
that just means that he played well.
I mean,
and also he didn't play against Tribe, so that contributed to it as well.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think that with Blur, if his pacing can be better, right, then it can help a lot. Because with Mayhem as a team and like looking at overall how they've been playing as a whole, right, they've performed the best against, like, at the very beginning when like everybody was like, oh my God, like Mayhem, cough Simplicity, has been doing their best, was when they were a really fast-paced, team that was applying constantly high levels of hill pressure, But with Blur in the mix, it becomes a bit different, because of the fact that now they have a really stable anchor player, right? In terms of, someone who can just sit down, beam people cross map and, hold the spawns, etc., all that kind of stuff, good stuff for them, and down the line. And, is also, a pretty decent sniper for the team when it comes to search and destroy and even potentially in control, with the Rytech. Even then, in hardpoint, his pacing is still, without question, the slowest out of all of them, by a decent portion. And if you look at like even what Space mentioned, right, the other time whenever he came here, was that one of the things that he finds, him and also Tech said, was for why Tribe is so dominant in their hard points is because they outpace everyone. Their pacing has been faster than everybody else. And so I think that's why, for me, Blur is going to be the X factor in the sense of if he's able to get his tempo faster while still doing his job, doing his role properly, then yeah, Mayhem could be a real threat, like a real serious threat for Tribe. But if not, then I realistically do not see Mayhem beating Tribe in hardpoint. Straight up. I'm just going to be honest.
I would say, I don't know, for me, I almost feel like, and obviously you have the more analytical approach, but I think as far as expectations go, I think for simplicity, I think we were super high on Kings up until that roster change, and it feels like the roster change has impacted him more than anything. I don't know what what necessarily is the 1-for-1 cause in that, but I think coming into that, we thought he was at like a top 3 AR in North America, and realistically, he just hasn't really looked like any type of a dominant force in the AR position. So I feel like for me, Kings is the guy that's got to step up. Now, I don't know if that means changing the way things work with Blur. I think that's probably going to be part of it. But even if you just look at the overall engagement rate, like he's taking fewer engagements than Blur is as well. When you look at both of the modes, you look at the control, and he hasn't really been really very strong at all. I'd say control has probably been his worst mode with a 0.77 KD. So I feel like Kings has got to be the guy that steps up. I know he was like, especially before they became Mayhem, like there was a good amount of talking. He told Vague he wasn't letting him win champs this year. So I feel like for me, you're going to talk that much, you got to back it up with your gameplay. And we hadn't really seen that in the groups. I'm hoping we see a little more of that in the playoffs.
For sure. I mean, I think there's an aspect of it where, like, yeah, he's young, and so like he's still growing, and mentally maybe he's not necessarily fully settled in yet in terms of breaking it in, especially as the LAN is coming up, right? Which is a completely new experience for him. But I think that there's also a matter of them just working out, like as you pointed out, like working out the dynamic between Blur and Kings, because of the fact that I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap between the two of them, because Kings kind of was like that anchor player before for them, and so now that job is being largely taken over by Blur. How is the dynamic going to be between the two? If they're constantly overlapping in terms of the spots that they want to play, and the comms aren't coming through sometimes for that and down the line, and then how will either of them be able to efficiently adjust to that in game? That could cause for them slowing down even more in terms of their tempo, which messes them up even more against faster paced teams when it comes to respawns. So that's my main concern, really, which is the reason why, for me, my expectations on Blur, because he's the more mature player. So I want to, I feel like he has the obligation in a way, for lack of a better way of putting it. Like, I put more weight onto him to be the one that helps with that, in terms of clearly communicating with Kings and being like, hey, I'm going to try to do this. And I know you want to play with your UL or whatever, like AR, then I need you to do this for me instead, or whatnot. Let's have a talk. They need to have that small talk happen,
right,
in order for it to work out.
All right, Little B, who's the X factor for Devious?
I mean, I do see both of you guys' points. Yeah, they are really important key players to. Devious or is it Mayhem?
Yeah, I said Devious. I didn't think you were going to say anything else, but you can give me Mayhem.
Okay, I thought we were all going Mayhem, but yeah.
Mine too.
Oh,
I
you
do
can give
agree
it. I was only gonna do one X Factor per player, and then it just turned into a lot more. But
I do
we can
agree
just
about
talk
the-
about the X Factor for Mayhem for
Okay,
the rest of the night.
All right, fair enough, fair enough.
I do.
We still gotta
I
talk
agree.
about the
Go
ahead,
matchup
go
that
ahead,
happens
go ahead.
after the first one too, because there's like 4 matches happening today. So
All I'm gonna say is that when you first answer that question, the first person that came into mind was Jesus. Not really of like his playstyle and whatnot, but more of him just keeping the players in check. Because 3 out of the 5 players are, the first time being in this kind of environment right now, and he's also a really mentally strong player. It's really hard to get in his head. It's really hard to get him, affect his playstyle or how he's playing while on stage or etc. But him and Blur, but more specifically Jesus, is just really important on keeping his players on check. If anything goes wrong, keeping him in the game and not just giving up big game, because that's really important what I see during the matchup between them and Tribe. But yeah, that's my key player.
all right, Verdict, you can give me your X Factor too.
Listen, guys, you know what? You're all wrong. It is nobody other than AO Raf himself. That guy has so much energy. Okay, he's gonna be the X Factor because he's gonna be the one running crazy on that map. He's going to be the one that's going to be able to keep that momentum high. It doesn't matter. Guy's just a ball of energy. I feel like all the experience aside, you got all these old heads in here. Let the man shine. Let the man cook. All right, I'm done.
All right, sounds good. All right, we'll move on to X Factor for Devious. I feel like this one, looking at the numbers, is pretty straightforward. Zolf was getting cooked for the entirety of stage 4. 0.65 respawn KD. I was looking through because one of them at one point I didn't even realize how bad it was. He had a map where he went 13 and 38.
Oh,
I understand he's probably on the objective. He's doing the dirty work. There is no scenario where any stage 4 player should ever be going 13 and 38. So for me, like, regardless of what the team's play style is, whatever's happening at any point, he's got to step things up, because it's very similar to what we saw for Boot on Animus. Like, we saw him, he had even started to step things up in the group stages, but come the playoffs, he disappeared at the worst time possible, because if you don't show up in the playoffs, you don't move on to stage 5. So for me, if Devious is going to have a chance, Zolf has definitely got to step things up. I think there's opportunities for all the players to improve, but it's definitely got to be primarily onto him to fix up a lot of things, because there are a lot of weak points in this game.
I agree. I don't think you could look at that stat line and just neglect that. We get it. You're getting cooked. You're getting fried. You're literally not even showing up. I mean, you're getting objective time, but it's got to be a little bit more than that. So we're hoping he steps up. That was where I wanted to head. And I think if you're looking at it from a grand scheme of things, this team is, kind of like the Mayhem roster. The heart and beating soul of it is that Kings guy. Whenever he's cooking, there's got to be. Rihan has got to cook early on. He's got to be starting hot. He can't get hot throughout the games. I think he's going to have to be the one man that does it all.
You think he's got to do it all? No help?
He's got to do it all. Bro. He's got to get some help, but he's got to be the one that starts it strong.
Oh yeah,
he can't wait until midway through a hard point and then we're seeing him get like 5-6 untraded kills. Man's just, I'm thinking about Aussie, and I'm talking about going up against LG. He's got to start strong early on. He's got to set the pace for this team. He's got to be the one that you're looking at.
All right. I could get on board with that, Lil B.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree on Rehan, but hey, I've been watching not gonna lie, 2Red, man's pretty good. 2Red's actually, I feel like, yeah, what you said, Rehan's gonna start cooking early, and I'm pretty sure that right man hand is gotta be 2Red or S-Thug. One of those two players gotta give him some help if he's gonna start cooking, because Rehan's not gonna win versus for LG by himself. He's gonna need some help, so it's gonna be one of those two guys. And we've known S-Thug, he's been freaking record breakers on kills on Mobile Mayhem. How many kills with the Fennec was it? 60 something or 50 something.
Yeah, 60 something, I think.
Like he
62.
can cook. He can cook. And with 2Red, I mean, I've been watching him a good amount here and there, especially in stage 4 groups, and he's also one player that could also fry with the help of Rehan. But yeah, those are the 2 players I'm really looking at. What about you, Hippo?
You know, it's kind of weird because looking at Devious's kind of play style and looking at how they thrive, you know, it's a very, very distinct from the other teams, right? They have a lot of lurking that happens from 2Red, along with, you know, Rihan, etc. down the line, that makes it so that they can, you know, find those moments where they just poke holes through the opponent. And so I think it's I definitely agree that Rihan needs to, you know, he needs to maintain that consistent, you know, threat that he's been posing across the map, you know, from the beginning to end, right? I always tell this with my players as well, and you know, I say don't ever get complacent just because we're on a lead, right? And that's kind of like one of the things that I feel like Devious has been doing a great job taking advantage of, which is a lot of teams that, you know, that eventually do lose against them, you know, get complacent when they get leads, and then they're able to kind of creep their ways back up through, you know, in particular 2Red, S-Thug, and, you know, Rihan making, you know, those big plays. But that said, you know, I'm just gonna take a whole other direction to this, kind of similar, akin to what I said before with regards to Blur, and, you know, mention Scott here. Because with Scott, he's kind of like the only player that's kind of, you know, a little bit more on the passive end of things. And I think he is really critical in enabling his teammates to do what they want to do by being the guy that's overlooking everything, right? But at the same time, I feel like he needs to put in a bit more work in terms of, especially when it comes to facing, you know, a team like us, you know, or other teams that also have really, really strong ARs or, you know, heavy LMG users, and just making sure that they're not necessarily losing those matchups. Hi, Washi. You know, against those guys and getting shut down constantly. Because if not, then it makes our jobs easier as their opponents, you know, in terms of knowing that, like, hey, these guys are probably going to be lurking around. We just need to watch out for them. But now if they have Scott, who's kind of just like, you know, overlooking them and also, you know, posing a threat to our own, you know, front line, then yeah, like then it makes it a bit harder for us as a whole, right? It's kind of that balance in a way, and I think Scott has so far done an okay job, but for sure, like, I think I would love to see him step it up a bit more. Obviously, yeah, we bring up Zolf and down the line, which, you know, for sure. I think Rihan is super critical in their SNDs thus far, and like he's kind of like the biggest threat that we find in their SND overall. So, but yeah, for me, if it's one player, it's Scott, especially because the biggest thing for me that I'm worried about for that team is how young everybody is except for Scott, right? And so for me, like them, I could easily see any of them just like mentally, just like, oh, like something happens, you know, at the LAN, and they're just like, just mentally, just like, you know, they just go off, right? And being able to have that one player who's able to reel it back in is actually so important, you know, in case something happens, which, you know, I mean,
Guys aren't known for having short tempers, though, right?
you know, I mean, I can't say, I don't know them very well personally, so I can't really speak on that, especially, you know, when they're playing in game, right? I can't really speak on that. I haven't heard them talk, but, you know, what I will say is, you know, ESL has been doing a really, really good job in terms of communicating with us about everything to make sure everything is going to be perfect on a technical aspect for the LAN. So while I have, you know, while I think it's really, really unlikely for anything to happen, right? At the same time, you know, even if it's not a technical issue, just like gameplay wise, like something happens where they're just like, oh, like why did like, and they get upset over it. They need someone like Scott to really step it up and be like, hey guys, it's okay. On to the next one. You know, just forget about it. Bad game, move on.
Good call.
You know, and be able to you know, reset them.
He is a D1 athlete.
That's
exactly.
true.
He's a D1 athlete and a more mature guy. So
yeah.
And he has a marvelous mustache.
He
so-
does. One to be envied by all men in the world.
So apparently, yeah,
Very
two red is codeine. So
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, yeah, never
Where have
mind.
you been, Little B?
He's been cooking me. Yeah, I know.
Did you
He's
not read
good.
the
He's good
brief?
then. He's good then.
Oh my
He's good.
gosh.
Okay.
I don't know why. No, okay. Agree with me. I don't get why players keep changing their names. All right.
Because
I don't know why
codeine
players
is
keep
not allowed to
changing.
be a broadcasted name.
There we go. We just call them code, so it's not as bad.
Wait, what was the reason for that though?
Bro,
Yeah,
what?
Ask your
No,
parents.
we'll have
I'm
this
not
conversation
educating
after-
you,
yeah.
Golly.
Okay.
Good lord.
God.
Hey man, I don't know, man. I'm just
Yeah, we know you don't know. You just woke up. It's fine. All right. We're skipping Hippo for this one. Verdict. Who's your X Factor for Luminosity?
Going to this one, the obvious answer would be, oh, Tectonic, Vague, or Band. No, I'm giving it to Washi. And I say this because their strongest game mode by far has been Search or Destroy. That guy is electric on stage, bro. He's something different. He's going to provide them the absolute best Washi forward. And also, I just feel like he is going to overall contribute to the success of the team.
I would get on board with that. I think I mean from what I've heard, he's like the main OBJ for the squad, so I think him playing in that role is definitely going to be essential. Obviously, we know he's going to show up, play a big role in the Search and Destroy. But I think sticking to the role as the objective player is definitely going to be crucial. Looking at the respawn KDs, you're going to expect your OBJ players to have lower KDs. He's typically main OBJ. Vague, from what I understand, is a flex, so not any surprise that they struggled a little bit more in the respawn KDs. But I think if they can step things up a little bit, and maybe not force as many scenarios where those other players are forced back into the objective. I think you look down the line, and there's a lot of maps where you have like your lurkers like Band that are being forced to get a lot of objective time. Any map where you have Tectonic getting over 30, 40 seconds of objective time, like something is going wrong right there. And I think one player that doesn't really get enough credit, to be honest, I don't think he gets any credit, is Envy. Like he's definitely one of the crucial pieces of this roster, and I don't think we ever really talk about him just because he doesn't make flashy plays, but he does what his team needs him to do for them to have a chance of getting the win. So even though we don't ever really talk about him, I think he's definitely a crucial player. I'm not going to necessarily say he's the X factor, but I think he's definitely somebody that we got to give a lot more credit to for the success of this LG roster.
Good take. Little B?
Yeah, I mean, Envy, I do agree on that. Last year, Stage 5, he was cooking. Everybody had him, like, everybody just kind of, like, underestimated him. Also, beginning of this year also as well, he was actually, I would consider, the best player in LG before the tribe merge up. But, yeah, I do agree that Envy is that one player to look at. But also, I do agree, Washi. Sometimes getting cooked, if you play objective, it's not the easiest role to do. But if he wins those crucial gunfights on the hill, could get his team to the finish line. But yeah, that's the one guy I'm really looking towards, Washi.
All right. We'll move on to the X Factor for Tribe. Hippo, you can talk again.
Wow, that's a really good question. I think Ravallo has been really just showing up a lot, to be completely honest with you. It goes without saying, Ravallo, Forsaken, there's no really particularly like weak player on that team, to be honest. So it's hard to say who's going to be, the predominant X factor per se. If there is one player that I would like to kind of, I think Ravallo has been just showing up as a whole, and same with Forsaken. It's a gimme, in a way. And I think, and that's kind of like the same thought process that Verdict has. But if there is a player that I would like to shine light on, it would be Solo. I think Solo for me has always been that player who is so good in terms of both energy on the stage, just being like a beam of bright light, that just, makes it so that there's so much hype energy on the stage. every time something happens. It doesn't even have to be a win, just a crazy play. You know, Solo is that guy. You know, I know from experience watching him on stage with LG. You know, so that there's that aspect of it, like beyond the gameplay. You know, because I think I think a part of the game that we've never talked with that is underlooked. You know, for lack of a better way of putting it, and kind of just kind of goes over most of the community's heads is the mental aspect of the game. You know, where you have to consistently think about, the fact that, yeah, you could have a player who's incredibly cracked and performing incredibly well in scrims, but then they just crack under pressure, or just the vibe is going down and then they just mentally crumble. And Solo's that guy who's able to consistently generate that positive energy for the team, which I think is so important. And at the same time, Solo is by no means a weak player when it comes to S&D. He's, such a strong player overall and drives the momentum of the team as well, like with his aggressiveness, and his pacing overall, his movement, which is matched by very, very few players as well. In terms of his ability to just get anywhere in the map so quickly. I just feel like he has so much going for him outside of just, like, obviously the gameplay is there, but then beyond the gameplay, there's something else about him that just really stands out for me. So I'm putting him as the X factor for Tribe.
Yeah. To add on that, well, yeah, I do agree. Solo is the number one X factor because just like experience wise, he is also their head of their spear on pace changing. Like, I think Tribe's aggressive playstyle and hardcore in their succession really comes from his playstyle and him just like attacking first, keep spamming, keep rushing. If it doesn't work, keep running towards at him. But the one thing with Solo is that, he can have amazing games where he goes like he runs the other team, just runs them over. But there's some games where he be going like triple negative, and he forget he starts how would I say it? Like, I would say like more like
which just flips, if
the tip of the spear isn't like performing well, then I feel like the other like part behind it, the wooden part, is gonna like crumble. So what I think with Solo is that he just got to be on his A game. You just can't see Solo, especially if you're gonna go against like like contending teams. You just need him to at least drop over neutral. Can't just see him going like triple negative. Can't see those games from him.
I think for me, the X factor is going to be Forsaken, not because of like any specific role, but just because he is the only rookie on that roster, and because of that, like, there is to a certain degree, maybe not necessarily going to be more pressure on him, but it is a different environment from what you've ever seen before, especially at a competitive level. So I feel like for him, he's just gonna have to put any of the nerves out of his head and play like he has been for the entirety of Stage 4, because no question he's been one of the best, if not the best player on that Tribe roster. I think coming into it, like, we saw all of those roster changes that were happening for Tribe, like, oh, Bolu's not going to be starting, oh, they picked up Robalo and Forsaken, oh, Tribe's doomed, and then all of a sudden they become top 2, if not top 1 in North America right now. So there's no question he's one of the best players, and I think he's going to continue to slay. But definitely, like we talked about, the mental aspect definitely plays a role to a certain degree for every single one of these teams. So for him, just not letting the stage get to his head and just continuing to play his game.
I'm going to be basic and short here. I'm going with the obvious choice. There's no way we're not talking about Robalo a lot more. Like,
but
listen,
we know he's gonna cook,
Yeah, we know
he's always gonna
cook. Man, but I just want to continue. Like, dude, he is finally on a team where he can actually do what he needs to do what he loves to do what he wants to do, and all of that just coincides with it. It's an easy choice. I'm looking at that guy all weekend long. The things that he is doing on the map is just, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. Okay, the man can do it all. Let him fry. He is going to be both the personality of that team. He ain't gonna let anything happen. He ain't never seen a bad day in his life, my guy. Literally a breath of fresh air. Robalo, love you, homie. Definitely going to be that X factor. And I know it's the obvious choice. I don't care, chat. I don't care at all. It's definitely got to be Robalo.
All right, fair enough. We covered all the teams, right? Did Little B give his? Oh, he
Yeah,
copied,
I
he
get
copied
mine.
Hippo.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Jez on the stable connection is going to be a different thing. But once again, I don't think that's like. I think Jez might surprise some people tomorrow because his numbers for stage 4 weren't like crazy. I don't think he's an X factor. Like, we know that Jez is going to cook. We know he's going to put up ridiculous numbers, and I don't think that you can really consider him an X factor because he's a world champion, and you know he's going to perform on that stage. So I think the last thing we want to talk about is expectations. Obviously, this is not a guaranteed matchup, but I think the general assumption in the COD Mobile Esports community is that we will likely see a Devious versus Mayhem lower bracket matchup, and that matchup is going to determine the final spot for Stage 5. So assuming that we get to that matchup, we'll start with a Little B. What's path to victory for Mayhem in that matchup?
All I'm saying is Mayhem's got it, or Sylvia's gonna get me. You know.
No, Sylvia wants you to be an unbiased analyst, so we're not letting you cop out like that.
Jokes aside, Rick, man, I really think that my personal prediction here. Are you on prediction or just on like?
What do they got to do to win?
What do you got to do to win? Okay, what Mayhem's got to do? I think everybody knows Mayhem's going to be that third qualifying team. I feel like they just got to do what they got to do, not play Devious's game. It all depends on how Devious plays versus LG. If I feel like Mayhem's gonna have a huge advantage mentally, and if they lose versus Tribe, and if LG smokes Devious out of the waters, and if they do what they're saying, I feel like just Mayhem just playing their own game and just doing what they do. I feel like they could just get the third spot.
Somebody in YouTube chat is saying that Space is a rookie. I'm dying. Sorry, yeah, I just got distracted by that.
YouTube never fails to deliver.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. Verdict. X Factor for Mayhem.
X Factor for Mayhem is coming into this matchup with a composed.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say X Factor. Path to victory for Mayhem. I can't talk.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Composed identity. You got to be strong in the hard points. You got to be able to chip away in the search or destroys, and the control, it's all yours. You just got to seal the deal. You can't let it get to game 5 either. I'm going to be honest with you. If you close it out in 3, that's ideal. 4 is acceptable. I don't know how I feel if it goes to a game 5. I don't know too much about the map pool selection for Devious, but I just, for some reason, I'm haunted by, from several seasons back all the way up until last season, like, they're such an unpredictable team to the point where it becomes just almost, how do I put it? Like, you don't know how to respond to them. You don't know how they're going to play. They're fair weather. Rihan's a freak whenever he gets when he gets on. If he's on, he's fine. But that's beside the point. Like, when a team is unpredictable like that, you don't really have any kind of expectations going into a matchup. I feel like that could be the thing that could come back to haunt Mayhem. So Mayhem's got to be able to handle this without going into that to that 5th game.
You don't think Mayhem wants to go to a 5th game?
No, I think they need to close it out in 4.
Yeah.
I don't think you go into a game 5 very confident. Look, when we saw Mayhem go up against anybody in Search and Destroy, it's not their strongest game mode, for one. For 2, what? Like, the map pool selection is going to favor them if they select the map. I still don't feel like that is going to be I still don't feel confident going into a game 5 with Mayhem. It doesn't matter if they pick the sides, wherever they feel confident on the map. I'm just going to say it like that. I don't feel confident for Mayhem if they go into a Search or Destroy game 5.
I mean, I feel like, as I said, like, both the teams have rookies, or mostly Devious has a disadvantage because all 5 of them are rookie, except Rehan. I mean, Rehan's played kind of like a stage 4 match before. But it all depends on how their matchup previously is going to handle. If they lose versus Tribe and LG, I really think the team that gets slammed by the other team is going to have the disadvantage because of like how much mental comeback they need. Because
so what if they both get slammed?
they both get slammed, I think Mayhem gets the advantage on that because they have Jesus, who's played on stage 5, and Blur, who's also done that as well.
I would agree with that. I think I think overall the lower bracket is going to feel a little bit more comfortable for the Mayhem squad, just because they have so many players that have been there before. I don't know. It is interesting because Rihan's just a microwave, you know. Like if the switch is flipped, then like anything is possible. And we saw that even in the hard point up against Luminosity. Like he starts turning up and he can flip a map on its head by himself. So I feel like come Search and Destroy, I would feel a little bit more comfortable if I'm Mayhem because of the unpredictability of so many players on that Devious roster. But I don't know. Like we've talked about before, there's so many things that can change over the span of 1 month. Improvements, that regressions, whatever it be in the different game modes. So overall, I don't feel super confident making a prediction in that one. I think you definitely lean the way of Mayhem just because of their track record and a little bit more consistency. Obviously, Devious did not have a match win versus any of these other top 3 teams, so that's something to note as well. But like we talked about before, lots to practice on. And we also know like that guaranteed who's going to be starting for Devious. Like that's something that's been up in the air basically since the start of stage 4 for Mayhem. So definitely a big question just based off of when they got that locked in, when they decided this is going to be our starting 5 and how well they can play with that starting 5. Hippo, thoughts?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. It's a recurring thing that I said before. But I think it just comes down to map picks, to be completely honest with you. Because of the fact that there are certain maps that, you know, I think, to be fully frank, Devious has a much smaller map diversity than Mayhem does when it comes to respawns at the very least. Now, at least, I mean, for sure in Hardpoint, I would say that's the case. Now, in Control, it's a slightly different story. I think that Devious is, actually is a pretty decent Control team, especially seeing, how they've been doing lately. So yeah, by no means do I think that, it's gonna be. I honestly feel like there's a very real chance that this goes to like a game 4. I can't speak for a game 5.
Realistic.
I think I can't speak for a game 5. I don't think either team would necessarily want that. And I think the more interesting dynamic that we are not talking about when it comes to this as well is the fact that when it comes to that game 5 situation, the team that's going to be in the reins for that should, technically speaking, be Mayhem right there when it comes to being able to, for example, select sides for the Search and Destroy, which can completely adjust the pacing. Obviously there is the aspect of like being able to choose maps, etc., all that kind of stuff, right? But even depending on, like, I honestly, both teams, by no means of offense to either of them, are not particularly strong on Search and Destroy anyway. So I feel like, yes, there is the map pick being essential, obviously, they won't, but at the same time, there some teams are really freaking strong. Like overall, they might not necessarily be the best at one map, but at one particular side, they might be overall really freaking strong compared to the other side of the map. So if they start off, offense, for example, on a particular map, and they're just, as long they just mentally might have to just think, okay, just need to win like 2 rounds, and then we're out of 6, and then we're good, like we're set. Defense, easy sweep. Like that could fully happen, right? Depending on whatever the map that they get in that game 5, if it really comes down to it, or even in the first S&D, really. So I think it's a matter of both teams, how they navigate their map picks is going to be a really critical factor in terms of deciding who wins. Because if Mayhem allows for Devious to kind of get their way for some of the picks, in particular for the Search and Destroys, right, and also the hard point. I think with Control, it's a different story, but with hard point, and Search and Destroy in particular, if they allow Devious to get their way, then Mayhem might be put into a run for their money. Not to mention, I'd like to highlight the thing that Verdict brought up about not being, not treating them or underestimating them by any means. They shouldn't. Devious is a team that has to be respected, and I'm sure the Mayhem kids are doing that, right? But at the end of the day, if they just look down on them and think, oh, like it's okay if we get to the lower bracket, like we lose against Tribe, we just have to face Devious, no problem. If they think that way and have that mentality by any sense of any remotely, thinking in that pattern, probably gonna lose. Like it's you just can't have that kind of mindset against a team like Devious, and there's obviously a lot more like nuanced interactions that I could get into, but I don't necessarily want it. I don't think it's worth deep diving into that when you guys can probably see that starting from tomorrow. So,
all right. Well, I think that covers most of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Is there anything you guys think that I missed that we need to cover before the glorious start of Stage 4 tomorrow?
Probably like, what's the matchup? What's the matchup to look out for? Which one?
You're saying what's the matchup to look out for before?
Yeah. Okay. No.
playoffs?
I'm talking about first matchups like LG versus Devious.
I don't think either of them is like a matchup to watch. I feel like you think
they're just gonna be like
there's the equal stakes, like equal expectations. I don't know.
Okay.
Do you think there's a matchup to watch out for?
I mean, I'm just going by the Stage 4 group matches, and I saw the Devious and LG. I know things have changed. It's been a month from now. Teams can change, and I expect LG to smoke Devious. But if Devious plays like how they played versus LG on the group stages, that could be a fun matchup to watch. But yeah, as I said, I if I was to put my money on it, I would think it's the easiest sweep for both teams, LG and Tribe.
Yeah.
I don't know, Verdict. Do you think there's a matchup to watch?
I think all of them are going to be matchups to
Yeah.
watch. I don't think anybody
That was my
can
thought.
overlook any of the. Yeah, I don't think anybody can overlook any of these. I don't. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be just sitting in the kitchen baking a cake. God forbid, I can't bake, but you get the picture. It's just not going to be one that you can just go over the motions. You just can't.
For sure.
Expect that you're going to win coming into this one. I think all of them are going to be great matches to watch. Obviously, we've already, kind of have like premeditated predictions and expectations, but I'm always up for a shocker, man. I'm always looking for something that, will change everybody's mind in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm not sure of the order of the 4 matches, but obviously 3 of the 4 matches that we have tomorrow are going to result in a spot in Stage 5. So I think even then, like, regardless of the scenario, whatever the order of the matches is going to be, like, no question, they're all absolutely crucial ones, and I'm excited to watch. But I think that's going to wrap things up for tonight. I don't want to stay up too late because obviously we got to get stuff prepped tomorrow. Hippo's got to meet up with his boys to make sure they're ready to take on that first match as well. So, any final words before we head out?
See y'all all tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll see you guys on stage tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, we're setting records
Y'all
tomorrow,
tune in.
right?
We are setting
Okay.
records tomorrow. We are 3 of the 4 of us are going to be watch partying, so definitely make sure you guys are watching somewhere. But I will be live on YouTube and Trovo, I believe. Well, I don't think I'm allowed to be live on Trovo. I'm going to be live somewhere. Little B and Verdict are going to be live as well, but we will have a special edition watch party having all 3 of us together on my broadcast. So if you guys want to check that out, we'll make sure to redirect the YouTube there, and you guys can check out their streams tomorrow as well. But looking forward to it. My first ever opportunity to watch party a major event for COD Mobile North America, and Excited to see what the teams have in store. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll have episodes of the Spawn after the action as well, so make sure to subscribe and get notifications turned on so you guys do not miss out on any of the action. That's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.